maybe this is the last remaining part of a lab, maybe of Burqa, where I'm
Yeah.
looking at like that notion of like alien like I'm looking, and maybe I'm extrapolating too far, but like the way the growth is there, I feel like that's, in fiction, science fiction, that's always like, oh, there's less gravity in this than wherever this grew.
All right, Parvision. We have a lot to talk about this week. We just found a new lab that's 3,000 years old. We have more God's Knights shenanigans going on. And apparently, Gunko's a big Brooke fan. She's a big New World fan, which I appreciated. So we got a lot to break down this week. But first, I just want to say, welcome back, Par. I heard you moved. You got a new setup. So that's exciting. And I'm excited to unveil that here, on the Redacted channel for the first time.
Thank you, Dax. Yep. I have a lot more to set up. That's why the background is still a little blurred out. But it was really good timing when you hit me up, because I have my computer, I have like all the stuff ready to start collabing and making content, like again, because now I have actually time. This move took a lot out of my schedule, right? So but this is a great chapter to reconvene on, for sure. Last time we talked
Yeah.
about like the ancient weapons. It was the midst of the Vegapunk message, I believe, right?
It was either that or like towards the very beginning of Elbaf. The last time we did a chapter review together, though, was during the Vegapunk message. That was
Right.
like right after the Gorosei all showed up. I think was the last
Hmm.
time we did a chapter review. Last time, yeah, we talked about ancient weapons, like you said. So
Yeah.
we got a lot to catch up on here for sure.
Yep. I'm excited to see what you got cooking.
Yeah, no, well, you too. And I want to start with your thoughts on this 3,000-year-old lab, which I'll go ahead and bounce over and pull up. I totally forgot I can do that.
Oh,
Um,
true.
but yeah, I got the setup. So here it is.
Look at the
I
flames on that.
Yeah, just
Woo-hoo.
just a little bit of anti automated copyright
Yeah.
catching,
Yeah,
just a little.
I don't know if you can, so I can do it later, but like I have a monitor floating in my background now. So
Yeah.
like I can pull up the thing here and then do like a weatherman thing, but I'll set that up like fully later.
Well, I have a
Um,
TV right behind me, and I thought about that, but it's like
yeah.
I just gotta I gotta get a different camera position, and I've been slacking on that because if I get a tripod that I can put like to the left over here, then you
Mhm.
can see me and the TV. But when I'm right in front of the TV, you can't. So, but
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah, it's gonna be fun
yeah,
to be able to do new stuff like that. But yeah, the 3,000-year-old lab. I mean, we knew that the One Piece world had at least 5,000 years of written history. Now, that timeline is very interesting because like 5,000 years is kind of like 5,000 years ago is like when the Great Pyramids in our timeline, right? Like, isn't it? It's something I forget what it was. It was like the end of the Egyptian empire is closer to our timeline than it was to ancient Egypt. So like they have their
right.
own ancient world that like to them was ancient, and like that's crazy because like it's kind of, you can't wrap when you're dealing with time at a scale like that, even relatively small scale, it's hard to fathom as a human. And I'm assuming that's what like Frankie and the rest of the Straw Hats are going to start grappling with, right? Because 800 years ago, Void Century, sure, like what if you were a nepo baby, you got the great grandchild, but you're on Elbaf now, and there's just people with
Right.
their great grandparents probably were in the Void Century, right?
Yeah, Jarl's dad theoretically could have been alive in the Void
Right.
Century.
Right. And so, the way Ripley casually goes like, "Oh, this shit like is from 3,000 for at least 3,000." Oh, not Ripley, Lilith.
Yeah.
Um said 3,000 years. Like to Ripley, it's probably like that's what everyone feels like about the Void Century. But to Frankie, that's like, "What? 3,000
Mm-hmm.
years?" And then if we brought Robin into the mix, it'd be even more interesting because some people like, I forget how they framed it, but this is a few chapters ago. Probably when we got the mural, they were like, "Oh, but like the first world must have been before the 5,000 or something like that. Like that 5,000 years that we've found
Mm-hmm.
out from O'Hara kind of gives us a timeline on the first world. And I was like, not necessarily, because 5,000 years that O'Hara had, that could have been when writing and like language
Yeah,
was invented, and so
when we had
that's
cavemen, you know.
right. And so we look at that the same way, where it's like that's the beginning of history, because we don't have any other way to have recorded the history before. That sure, we know humans existed beforehand. We just
Right.
don't know what they exactly did, other than like, the paleontology or anthropology or whatever the science
The
appropriate.
ology. Yeah.
Yeah, appropriatology, relative to figuring out how that worked. Geology also, like, carbon dating, things like
Right.
that. Um, um, but so when we get to 3,000 years and this lab is from there and it's scientifically advanced, and we have the other corresponding data point of 800 years ago with a scientifically advanced nation, at a precipice of one of the presumably second world, it kind of makes me think that this lab was in or at the precipice of what was recorded for the first world, right? Like 2,000 years from recorded history, that was when the first world was discussed, or maybe that's the time period of the
Mm-hmm.
first world.
I
And
agree.
then 3,000 to the 800 years ago, that's like the creation slash the development of the second world. And now we are at the third world, breaking point, which is an interesting thing, and seeing how Oda has spaced out the time. But I think, like, I don't even remember, but maybe I'm making this up. I feel like is it in like Christianity that like the like world began 5,000 years ago, some shit like that. Like,
I think it's something like that. Yeah, it's very very young, especially relative to the physics, scientist answers,
right.
whatever the ology is for that. Astrology, I don't
Yeah.
know. Definitely
Which
not that, but
they, as far as, like, again, I'm not an expert, but I knew some things, even, I mean, prior to One Piece, and One Piece didn't make me research that much into it, but like back then, like Noah was an eight, I think he died at the like age of 900 or something like that. Like like humans, like, lived for like a millennia, according to
mm-hmm.
the Abrahamic Accords. I don't know if that's the appropriate way to reference them, but
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
yeah,
That those old texts that like three religions are based off, or most
the
religions are
Harley
based off
text. Yeah,
of religion. Yeah, yeah.
our Harley text. But at least we got more than just like a paragraph per chapter, which is just a funny thing, aside with the Harley text. But yeah, the first world being there, and the timelines, it makes me wonder if like Oda is relating it to, like, our human history. We have a very kind of similar timeline as far as like recorded history goes.
Mm-hmm.
So other than that, kind of waiting. I think the appearance of this lab is very odd, to me, in a lot of ways. I mean, like, even the setting of it like, it has like an alien, like, apocalyptic zombie alien cocoon type of, I don't know what genre of like a
Yeah,
video game.
it feels like a lab that like has been overgrown, right? Like it got like
Yeah,
abandoned, right?
like,
Like there's like an
yeah, Halo.
apocalypse. Yeah, exactly. It's something like that. I got the same vibe. Um,
Also, the size isn't giant sized, at least from what like, Ripley is already the size of the first dome that we see, like the bunker that we see, like, and the stairs are big, but they're not at, like, I remember in the throne room, I feel like the stairs in there were huge, and these stairs, yeah, they're big, but like Frankie could like toddler walk those, I feel like, if not just like,
mhm.
stair climb it, but it's like a odd
It,
size. It's
it
like,
it's so hard to tell if like, because Oda's not a good scaler, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because like I agree with you on this panel, but then if you go down here and look at one of the last where did I just see, right here where it says "What's wrong, Bonnie?" That scaling looks a lot more accurate. Like it looks giant relative to
yeah,
Ripley,
that's true, that's
right?
true.
But I agree with you. I thought it looked small too, especially whenever you see Lilith and Bonnie in this window. Like
Yeah,
with how big they are, like the window doesn't look massive compared to them, so that makes it feel like a human-sized window. But
yeah,
again, with the way Oda is with this stuff, I think it's kind of a 50-50 right now. But
Yeah. I feel like I'm gonna pull up the throne room again because I feel like the throne room, like Roto is a considerably big giant, and I feel
mhm.
like even the throne room. Nah, I don't know. It's hard to say. Let me see if I can find a better picture. But yeah. I mean, the lab is an interesting uh it's one of those things that it feels random to reveal right now, um because like my question last chapter was like, dang, so Ripley, Frankie, Oda separated them. Why is Oda doing that? And then
Mhm.
they're not that far away from the danger. Like, I feel like they should have been sieged, and they are being sieged, but then Oda chose to stretch out the tour that only Frankie's experiencing.
Yeah,
And
which I like because of the Atom Tree. You know what I mean?
right.
But
And
still,
timing of it is odd, but then the other part was like, okay, this might be translation, this might be me, like, harping on it, but Lilith getting lost and then just being here, I was like, all
yeah,
right,
yep.
smartest, perfect memory, sure, whatever, like,
Yeah,
she
I called that out too because I was like, okay, so this 12-year-old girl and Lilith, who's never been here before, just start wandering around this giant island with these giant animals and I mean giants, you know what I mean?
yeah.
And they just start wandering this island randomly, this massive island we just got here. Right, we got here
Or,
today, and this island is supposed to be so big that like you can't walk it, right? Like you need
yeah.
someone like a giant to carry you and all that stuff. And they somehow went and found this lab right away. I'm like, all right, Oda, I know you got to move the people around to make things interesting, but come on, like
and
there's no way they're finding that quickly. There's just no way, no
and
chance.
they were trying to get a visa, like, which is also like, what, why were they trying to get like citizenship? Like, when have we ever done that? But then, like, that was already weird, but then Oda said, who needs visas in this world? Like, let me just have them get lost. And then the other part is, like, Vegapunk has been here, and so that's also a discrepancy on like the perfect memory, because like Lilith should have the memory. And if Vegapunk's plan was for Lilith to go to Elbaf afterwards, like, if the grand scheme of things, I feel like unlocking if it was locked up, or I don't know how the brain works with the rest of the Vegapunk still alive and Punk records or whatever. But point is like, I feel like the memory, there should be some memory of the thing, like, of Elbaf, to a certain
I,
extent, that you wouldn't get lost. Or
us, I mean,
yeah.
do we know that Vegapunk actually got to like tour Elbaf? You know, 'cause, I mean, I'm sure he's been here because he obviously wasn't far, but I don't know if he ever actually got to like tour it. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because
well,
like,
they did show him going to the Walrus, or the library, like, right, because that's the Saul scene where he's walking up on Saul. Getting lost on Elbaf is because, like, you've been there, you know what I mean? And like Vega, I think we talked about this last time. Vegapunk is the type of dude where, like, we have in our world, where you take the dude on the helicopter and look at the city, and then he goes back home and paints it perfectly. That's literally his devil fruit. You know what I mean? Like, he has perfect memory. And Lilith just goes, "Yup, I recklessly got lost with a 12-year-old on a giant island and stumbled upon a 3,000-year-old lab and decided to still, like, chill here instead of going to get my visa, which is, like, probably important." But yeah. So,
yeah, well,
it's
yeah,
just
because
silly.
that's because she wants to stay there, right?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, again, does Elbaf care? Like,
They care about people being pure blooded or whatever, right? Like they don't like the mixed blood giants
I
and stuff like that.
if we get into that, that's also silly, because they, like, don't care about humans as much as they do, apparently, of, like, because the way a hired in situation was described, it wasn't that his mom was like a human, it was that his mom was like a giant from a different island and had dirty blood. And so, like, this, and the way, like, Harold in and of himself, obviously at this point, very suspect relationship with the God Knights, which we could talk about later, but he goes like his whole platform is peace with all the races and let's defuse the thing. But ancient giants, they're too, and then tears off his horns and then has a child with horns. What is he supposed to tell Loki at that point? Tear off your horns because like we like all races except for our own. Like that's so weird. You know what I mean? So it is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just kind of goes back to like the reverse of what Saul said, because Saul didn't like Elbaf giants, right? He thought they were like savages.
Right.
So I think it's the same thing where Elbaf giants probably see other giants as weak. I would imagine, right? Like they're they're too peaceful or whatever. So I'm guessing that's it. But yeah, it definitely does feel weird that she actually has to like go, like she can't just be like, hey, I'm friends with Luffy, let me stay,
Yeah, I mean the other part too is that like we saw a mass group of giants react to various races within the Straw Hat crew, and it didn't seem like it was like coded in like, oh my god, these are Straw Hats. It was like when they talked about Jinbei and they're like, oh my god, your skin's blue. It wasn't like there was no like racism coding, you know what I mean? Like that's why it's weird, because like, dude, they treat giants, humans, bag of bones really well. So I'm like, what does dirty blood even mean here? Like, what does that refer to, especially if the king is an ancient giant? So we already knocked out one of the discrepancies, and the only other one left is the Yeti Cool brothers, which Oda kind of has to retcon a little bit because of their age, but I don't know if you caught that.
Well, I mean, whatever Saul is too, right?
Yeah,
he's not an Elbaf giant.
Yeah, which that also is interesting because I mean, Oda can do whatever he wants with Saul's situation. I kind of looked at Saul as just like, maybe it just means like he was always with the Navy, and like that's why.
Well, he's from the South Blue or West, one of the blues.
That's true. You gotta wonder like how, like, how Oda starts bringing in the whole giant, like the lack of knowledge the world has about giants. Like Stelly, a noble at the world level, and he was like, giants, these mythical things that their saliva, and it's like, wait a second, hold on. Oda's actually going to be making giants more accessible. That's a little interesting, given how like the world has responded to them, especially the whole thing about like, we haven't seen giants in 100 years since the giant pirates had disappeared. Like that whole like, it's not like a hard and true narrative, at least from memory, but it's something that was kind of like, oh my god, giants, they haven't run amok since the giant pirates 100 years ago. And it's been kind of like they've been kind of like the Avatar, a little bit like that. But yeah, and then meanwhile there are giants in the Navy, so that's also fun.
Yeah. Well, and we also have San Juan Wolf, who is from the West Blue, so there's a whole other like group of them in a totally different ocean, right, that are separate.
Yeah, San Juan Wolf, that one was an interesting one too.
Which, did you catch that the guy who got hurt by the thorns first was Mr. Wolf?
Ooh, yeah.
And that's not how the naming convention should work, right? Like, it should be Mr. San Juan if they're really related, theoretically. Like, it should be San Juan's his family name, right? But we know nothing really about him, so I'm just gonna bank on that being a potential thing, that they're connected in some way.
Yeah, I've just been memeing on Mr. Wolf, so that's just me. Yeah, that's a good point. And then I brought up the Yeti Cool brothers, but the reason I said retcon is because the kids at the school are like 20, right? Like Colin's like 20, and then the Yeti Cool brothers are full-grown assassins. They are 25.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Yep. Like, I want to be whatever they are. They're so sick compared to the...
Yeah, and they are a type of giant. We just don't know what kind.
Oda literally said mystery giant or something like that. That's like Sandman translated.
That's weird.
Like they're like, the NBA player who's like 7 foot tall in 5th grade, apparently.
like all of them, I feel like.
Yeah, like the Yeti Cool brothers show up to the Walrus Academy, and then the Walrus Academy is just like, And they play like a
That-
slice of life baseball game, and they're like, they're fifth graders too. What? What do they feed them over there?
Dude, I would love for Oda to make like a color page that's like the Walrus School basketball team or something,
Yeah.
and it's all the kids versus like 5 Yeti Cool Brothers or something like that, because they're all the same age range, but they just dunk all over them. I would love that.
Dude, complete, because like the Yeti Cool Brothers took on, like, they fought Monster Point Chopper, and they were boxing with like considerable threats, and they were like chill about it,
Yeah,
and
they wear straw hats, which is like, I mean,
Yeah.
what is going on?
Yeah.
Well, something I wanted to get your thoughts on regarding the lab. And by the way, if you're watching and you want to hear about something other than the lab, we will try to get to that towards the end. But there's a few things I really wanted to bounce off you here. First off, about like the lab being 3,000 years old. I think what could be happening here is that the lab was built 3,000 years ago, like initially, but the version we're seeing now took a really long time to get to, because you think about Egghead, or probably any of Vegapunk's labs, but Egghead is the best one that we saw the passage of time on, where like whenever he first went there, and like I think like Drake paid him a visit, if I remember correctly, and some other things happened. Well, remember, it was a lot smaller, and it took him, years and years of building upon that to make Egghead into what we saw whenever we were there, right? It took some time to do that, and that's after he had a bunch of developments already, known, right? Because, like, he already had his lab in Baltimore, then he went and made a better one at Punk Hazard, now he made a better one. So, like, he had that experience. So if you think about it, it took pretty much his whole life to get to that lab, and that's given that he had a good, he had the brain fruit, and he had a lot to build off of, like, we always say we stand on the shoulders of giants in our world, where, like, the people of the past who gave us that base level of information, well, that lets us build on top of it, so we go further and further. And so I wonder if this lab is essentially the very first time that a scientist ever even had a lab, is essentially what I'm thinking is happening. And you broke down the timeline, which we can get into that more too, but I think that kind of changes things a little bit, because, like, how Frankie says, in regards to Vegapunk's tech, it's like he's 500 years in the future, right? So that also gives us a little bit of a timeline in terms of, like, wow, it takes 500 years just to get from where we are now to where Vegapunk is, like that level of intelligence. And so whenever I see this 3,000-year-old lab, I'm like, well, it probably took at least 1,000 or more than that to start getting to, like, where we're at today, like, not where Vegapunk is, but where, like, the average person kind of is, right?
Right.
And so I almost wonder, I don't know if the 3,000 is telling us about the first world, like part of me thinks the first world ended, like, closer to the Void Century, or it ended with the Kairoseki calendar. In my mind, those are the two kind of things, because those are, like, the two, like, major linchpins and change in time, but
that calendar was the 5,000 year thing. That also lined up, right? Or was
that's 1,500 years ago.
1,500. Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is.
And if you guys don't know what the Kairoseki calendar is, it's like the years in One Piece. Like, it's year, well, like 1,500 right now, 1,502 in One Piece or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. So that's always been my mindset, is like I'm leaning more towards the first world ended towards the Void Century time, because it's like the Ancient Kingdom got too advanced, and that's like, then it cut off, and then the second world could be the Void Century. But if not, then I think it would be this first world would have ended with the Kairoseki calendar, which is the age of the sea circle, is what that translates to.
Right.
But it's about 1,500 years ago.
1,500 BC, technically, like, if we were to translate it to our kind of, like, mechanism, right? Because
that would be year zero. It would be 1,500 AD right now.
Yeah, 1,500 AD right now, but I'm saying if she's saying 3,000 years ago, then 1,500 BC.
1,500 past the 1,500, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be 1,500 BC is when that lab was made.
Right.
Yeah, that's true no matter what, actually. Yeah, that's definitely accurate.
So that's interesting. And now, like, I see, because having that calendar is actually huge, because I've not forgot about it, but, like, I had assumed that it lined up with this thing. I didn't double check. But that's interesting, because, again, going back to the whole timeline parallel with our world, right? Like, the Roman Empire, like, was when did they fall? Was it like 800? It was around like the pre 1000 AD. So like 800 years would have been the void century.
476 AD.
Yeah, so like in between, like past the thing, and then, and they obviously built like a lot of Greek and
Yeah.
Egyptian stuff led to that. So that's interesting.
And you think about all the Christian ties with the world government too, with with the fall of Rome, and also Nerona Emu could be Nero. Also, there's a lot of ties there.
Right.
Because my mindset basically at this point is just in time in this lab. This lab like does throw a little bit of a curveball, but to me, I think it would just make the most sense that like the moon people came down, they helped the ancient kingdom get super advanced, they got way too advanced and way too dangerous, and then that led to the end of the first world where like Emu and the 20 kings are like, we're stopping this, and then the void century would just be the second world because it talks about like the flames of war and stuff like that. We know like the void century was an entire war. Then that's kind of been my mindset. So I guess this lab in that timeline would be like the very first time that they started getting high tech. And that builds to the second point that I wanted to bounce off of you, which I think is super relevant. And by the way, if you disagree with this timeline, it really doesn't matter because I think the really key part to this lab now, which could tie to my theory or could not, is that we got to think about Birka, right? Because Birka in Scandinavia during the Viking Age was a major trading city. And then in One Piece, we have Birka, the Sky Island, which Enel lived on but destroyed. And then we also have Birka, the Moon City, which was highly advanced. And so now we see this highly advanced place in the Elbaf tree, and so I'm wondering, could this be a sign of, I don't know, maybe this scientist built this lab and then was able to communicate with the Birkins, right? Like, hey, there's people out in space, come down here, right? We got, like, why don't you just come down here, we got resources for you, whatever. Like, that could be an interesting paradigm where, like, that's how they first connected, because I do think Birkins and Giants having a connection makes way too much sense, given the Viking past and all that stuff, and the Skypiea connections and everything like that.
Yeah, I agree.
And so I'm wondering, like I said, I don't know if the lab could have eventually become advanced enough to contact the Birkins, and that's why they came down, which we know they ran out of resources, but, like, maybe they were welcomed, down or whatever. Or conversely, maybe this lab, started it, and then once the Birkins came down, that like started a war almost, because it's like you had two high-tech factions in a way. So yeah, I'm not sure, but interesting potential outcomes.
Earlier you on a thought logic train of the progression of Vegapunk's lab, which is interesting because I've also like discussed that. I forget if that was like one of my later, like my last videos I'd posted before the break, but the Vegapunk's lab, right? So he had always had the plan to float his island or float his lab. That was always in the cards, which is a very interesting thing. That is in that chapter. I think it's chapter 101 or 1101, where Kizaru came to the island. Umit was transferring all the stuff from Punk Hazard, and he was talking to Stussy. Stussy's like, wow, you built all of this in 2 years. That's that lab you were talking about that he'd built from scratch, allegedly from scratch with some parts from Punk Hazard, and then they were facilitating more transfers from Punk Hazard. And then that's what he said. He said like something along the lines, my plans here, I always had the plans for my lab since Punk Hazard. And so that like kind of implies, I'm forgetting the exact words, but kind of implies the whole cloud situation, because that was one of the core things. And then he re-emphasizes how important the cloud machine was. So when and then what's also interesting is that he didn't necessarily care about Egghead to the extent, which like one thing that's interesting is that he went there, and we don't know if like Emeth being there was a reason for his choice to be there, or like he found him later, which is just like an odd thing. Like if the island was bare, surely you would see Emeth, like and it's not really hiding that well, because the reason why it was hidden was because he put up the hologram facade around it, and then he was like, how did you guys find this? There's a thing, did you walk through walls? And yeah, they did. And so that was the other thing that Vegapunk said was interesting, is that he like essentially from where he was with his island to where we saw it, like there was a lot of filler holograms also, which is weird when it comes to destruction of Egghead, because like the holograms didn't necessarily look like it was that populated. But now fast forwarding a little bit, not fast forwarding, but going back to the end state of Egghead, the last most important part of the lab or Egghead was the floating cloud part. And that floating cloud part is the most resemblant thing of what we're seeing right now. So you take something where Vegapunk started a lab, he had to transfer it, and then because of like continued prosecution, he had to then escape and jettison. And then now we have the last remains of this lab. If you were to say that all of his lab, that would be false, because like there's a lot more to it.
Right.
And it might be that this is a similar state where like maybe this is the last remaining part of a lab, maybe of Burka, where I'm looking at like that notion of like alien like I'm looking, and maybe I'm extrapolating too far, but like the way the growth is there, I feel like that's in fiction, science fiction, that's always like, oh, there's less gravity in this than wherever
the
this
trees,
grew.
right? The almost water drop shaped trees,
Yeah.
almost. You know what I mean? Like they're
Yeah.
Yep, that's
Like
very sci-fi for sure.
if it's like if it grew upside down or grew in lower gravity, so it grew odd like that, and this tree or this like overgrowth that we're seeing, maybe it started somewhere else and it landed here and it had like foreign substances on it like that. It almost seems like not related to Elbaf, which would be interesting because again, Ripley says the locals have no clue about this thing, which again is interesting given the scope of giants. But then also we end off this segment of Frankie going like, whoa, this thing is crazy for Elbaf, and then Ripley goes, no, that cloud that's not normal. That's not from this place. So, and it's a dream manifesting thing of this cloud. And so it's like, maybe that it like the way this sequence starts and ends, maybe it's related, where this also is not related to Elbaf. It came separately. Maybe this is where not Dream started, but Devil Fruits. We still don't know the whole story about Devil Fruits. Is it Void Century or prior? Another way you could think about it too. Some people think the mural has first world, second world, third world depiction, and all in the same image, divided up, whatever. And that left side or right side, that I think most people, from what I remember, thought that that's the first world. And maybe this lab is that first world depiction of a thing, and then people's souls, whatever. It could be there, and then you see the balls, the things. I don't know. It could be that.
And you know what? That actually ties to a question I wanted to ask you regarding it. So from here on, yeah, exactly. It's almost like it was scripted, right? And we're gonna try to get through some of these questions, and I got a couple more questions regarding the chapter. So we're gonna go just super quick because I know you're limited on time. Because I know we're gonna record something else after this too. So, but anyway. From Will of Fire in the Discord, he was wondering, do you think the lab or factory that we see in the new chapter is the original source of creating the atom trees originally, 3,000 years ago before science, maybe to help terraform the atmosphere, which is something we also saw in Egghead, right, where like he wanted to change the weather and make it more, enjoyable. And he also said, and it could be due to the pollution from the factories that we also saw in the first world, which would kind of make sense that there'd be some kind of interplay between those two. And then also maybe they use pieces or seeds from the Tree of Knowledge, because also the Tree of Knowledge is 5,000 years old, and we have this lab is 3,000 years old, so who knows if there could be some interconnectedness there. Right. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think the idea that it's related to the trees themselves, the Atom Tree, I guess we don't know the age of the Atom Tree on Elbaf, right? We just know that it's so old. Actually, wait, no. Frankie's thing's a little spotted, especially when, his introduction for the Atom Tree was like even to him. I know the words, it implies that there were more Atom Trees. We just kind of felt like a safe assumption was that there were one. But we can rely on the fact that when Ripley revealed that like it wasn't that scarce, and even she would be like, wait, this shit's expensive, let me just sell some, right? And Frankie's like, what? Like, this around the world, this is like a rarity, right? So like at least relying on that, what Frankie says there. But yes, there's more than one Atom Tree, but effectively the tree is still rare. And I think that what he said was like a few thousand, wasn't it like it survived thousands of years of war or something like that? Like I
I want to say they said thousands, but they didn't give an actual number.
Right, right,
You know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean?
So his story is obviously spotted. This is what we commonly talk about when it's like, bet on Kaido. It's like it was in quotes, and certain things are like, narrative. We have to. Is the person a reliable narrator in this situation? In all regards, Vegapunk should be, but even he
Yeah.
admitted that he doesn't have all the info. So we have to take that with a grain of salt. So looking at this with the tree focus is very interesting. Terraforming the Earth. They did on the moon. They did say that this is a blue planet. I don't know if I'd look at the planet at the current state from a bird's eye view and be like, see a blue, like, yes, it has blue, but also has a giant red ring around it, and be like, that's a blue planet. I'd be like,
Yeah.
that's I don't know, a donut planet. Like,
And did you see Oda confirm that is the actual name of the planet? That is the actual name of Earth in One Piece, is the blue planet. That's official now.
right, right. Yeah. So
Which
yeah.
makes me think that Space People probably did name it, even though I do agree with you. Now, could the Red Line have come later? You think about the Birkins when they came down, they said the blue planet 1100 years ago. What if the Red Line wasn't what it is today? And so that's why the name started, and now maybe it is the blue and red planet, but it's just since it already had the name, right?
Right. So it, like, there again, these are the things that it's like, will Oda, I mean, like, will Oda use the details? He doesn't necessarily need to, but then he recently doubled down, like you said, on that one. So I guess that is something we should usefully use to craft here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like the origin of, like, the trees and devil fruits are also interesting, because if you were to believe that this is the first world stuff, well, we look at the stanza or the paragraph that they gave us. It's like, the forest, was it the god of land was mentioned there. In the second world, the god of the forest was mentioned.
Correct.
And so I feel like in this idea that Will of Fire put out, that God of the Forest would be major, because if you wanted to push that idea, then the God of the Forest would definitely be the progenitor of whatever this thing is, right? And then that would shift a lot of people's timeline of how things work. But you said it earlier. You said that this lab could be like at the start of the second world, and then the Void Century, or I don't know if you said it exactly like that, but like the Void Century would end of the second world or something like that. And then, we don't know when the start of it, and maybe the start of it is the, what we hear at the beginning of the chapter. That was technically like a more longer, elongated chapter too.
The end of the second world to me is definitely the Void Century. It's just all about when do you think the first world ended? You know what I mean? That's kind of the ultimate thing, which for me, like, I think there's a good argument for it being like the Void Century is like, the 100 years of the Void Century just is the second world, and everything before is the first. Or it could be the first world goes up to the start of the Kairoseki calendar. And I don't know what... Like, the thing for me is, we don't really know about conflict that far in the past, right? Like, we don't... Like, the Void Century, okay, there's this big climactic war where the power of the world changed, all that stuff. Like, we know that, but we don't really know about any other one. So that's why I kind of default towards the first world ended 900 years ago, and then the Void Century just is the entirety of the second world. Like, that, to me, that's like the simplest. But but I don't think that's for sure. It could be, like I said, the Kairoseki or whatever.
And I feel like I forget where the source was, but I remember verifying the source. But I was like, wait, where did we learn this? Like, I always forget where we found it out. But I think it was said that the Long Arm tribe and the Long Leg tribe had a 1,000-year war. I think it ended with the Void Century.
It's still going on. It started 1,000 years ago.
Going on?
Yeah, I'm gonna try finding it. It was mentioned in a cover story as the text. I'm gonna try finding it.
Yeah, and that's where I was like, wait, did it end with the Void Century, or was it before? Because I remember referencing it in a video. I just forget how I referenced it. But the point is that there are, like, small things like that. Like, that is a war that predates the Void Century. So that's interesting. But then the second one that I'd like to bring up, and this one's honestly a little frustrating. Because I feel like this is something that should have been answered in the SBS. Like, surely someone asked about this, and Oda just probably decided to give us Nami's boob size like a 7th time instead. Which was when Robin was, I guess, like, feigning to Crocodile about what the poneglyph had actually said. She had said a bunch of dates and it was related to Alabasta. And I feel like, and I might be forgetting, but like I feel like King Cobra had like said something like those are like past kings or something like that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but like we don't know if those dates were true, but those are dates that predated. Those are like the AD dates. Those are the dates that
Yeah.
predated the Void Century. It was like the year 137, 267, like stuff like that. And we had names. We had names and locations. I think one of them was like Mahmudin and stuff like that. Like I was gonna make a God
Mm-hmm.
Knights video on that. You know, I'm sure that name. I said that name particularly because I know that there's a few people who had theories related to characters or mythological people with similar names. Maybe it rings some bells for some of your viewers. A lot of theory crafters there, but yeah, there's a few names, a few dates, a few details, and I just wish we knew if those held water. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like if those meant anything.
And I looked it up. I couldn't find the actual page because I guess I don't have it saved. But Long Arm and Long Legs have been in a conflict that's been going on for over 1,000 years. So that's what the wiki says. So it's still
Over
ongoing. Yeah, and you know it. But I do know that in the cover story, it definitely had 1,000. Like it might have said over 1,000, but for me, whenever Oda includes an actual number, I always put a lot of weight on it. Like in Skypiea, he was like, or Robin was like, "Wow, these ruins have been here for at least 1,100 years." And to me, I'm like, okay, well, 1,100 matters. Like Oda's not just throwing these numbers around. Like it might be like 1103, 1104, but 1,100 is what we got to think about. And so for me, I've always thought this long arm and long leg thing, if it is 1,000, I wonder if Emu is tied to that. Like Emu could be a long arm that was maybe, you know, because you also think about Brook in the time skip, right? Because he obviously saw the summoning circle. Hey, Cliff, come here, buddy. Cliff knows it's almost time to move to the next video, but but we know that, you know, Brook met the long arms, like, because they were like trying to summon something to help with that war, and I'm like, is that just a big parallel? Like, what did Emu summon something to help with the long arm long leg war, and that's just how they got these powers and stuff? Like, what's you know? Yeah, I wonder. Yeah,
it's
I don't know.
crazy how these details stitch together somehow. You know what I mean? Like so many not unrelated, but like sparsely spread out things. And to your note about the numbers, I agree. And I feel like where if there's like over or at least, like that's just Oda building in flexibility, so like he could be slightly shifting it here and there.
Yes,
like I'm not gonna be
exactly.
mad if we find out that the war was like 950 years, like close enough, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? But but back then when he wrote it, it's like, let's just go to at least 1,000 years. So like
It's
if I
something like
decide
that.
yeah, if I decide to include a lab from 3,000 years ago, it's a stretch to say that this is related to 1,000 years. But at least I said at least, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Little plausible deniability.
Yeah, I doubt that lab and this and that 1,000 years was like directly related, but like in terms of some of the corresponding details, I feel like, you know,
For sure.
those wars, creating races, Dosundatas, that's a new thing, you know what I mean? Like, you know, all of those things it feels so crazy to say, but like Oda has, like, from Alabasta to whenever I imagine that 1,000-year line was, which probably is the time skip. So what, chapter 200 to chapter 600 to chapter 1100. There's random details. We just got to keep looking, you know, until we find the One Piece.
Yeah, that's. I've honestly been thinking about doing a video like that, of just like because Artur's done the timeline before, so I'm not trying to do exactly that, but I do want to go through and be like, all right, guys, there's a lot of like little details that probably connect. I'm not really sure how, but let's just talk about all these things, you know, like all these different details in the past. And you know, one thing that I know I got a couple more questions to get to, but you mentioned something that I do want to mention because it ties to the chapter. You know, we talked about how Brook tying to the time skip and the long arms, that might tie to Emu and all the underworld stuff. Like, you got to think about those parallels. Well, in this chapter, we saw the Gunko, however you pronounce it, is a big Brook fan, and I think that might matter because so you have a Brook fan who also knows how to use the circles, and Brook has also seen those circles before, and he's also been to the underworld before, and so now you got her potentially coming up and being like, Soul King, like, I'm a huge fan, and I'm just wondering, and also did you notice that she is already showing her panties? So then Brooke can,
Hmm.
Brooke and her are gonna be best friends, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, which is at the end of the
And
song too. So that
yeah,
like as a fan, she's like, "Oh, he just wants to see
and
panties. I got you, brother."
and even when he got like summoned by the circle in the time skip, they were like, "Do you need an offering? Like, do you need a sacrifice?" And all he said was like, "Show me your panties."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so there's it's like Oda already kind of tied his gag into the circles in a way, into the summoning element of it all.
I
And
don't know if
so
Brandon King or Time Lord submitted anything, but that this logic line would support his meme theory that I love, which is that the One Piece is a swimsuit, or I don't know if it's his, but
oh
like he's always brought it. He's the person who brought it to me, and he's always talked about it. Because then it's like, that was the offering, the original One Piece swimsuit, and it was like Emu's swimsuit or something like that. I don't know what
yeah,
Emu.
I mean it'd be funny because you think about like Frankie, that was a big thing for him, right? Like his underwear, and then yeah,
They
I
took
mean
it. Robin took it, grabbed him by the balls. Yeah,
right, yeah, that's interesting. I didn't
yeah,
think about that. All right, I got a couple more questions for you here. We got a two-part question from Mr. Bushido. You may have heard of him before.
yeah.
First off, who do you think Usopp will fight if he gets a fight? Which I think he definitely is going to get one. I'm hoping Killingham puts him asleep so we get nightmare versions of all the past villains. I'm hoping we see Usopp Dream World where he sees a nightmare version of himself who attacks him by pointing out his insecurities before Sniper King returns to motivate Usopp. So I did a video like 2 weeks ago, maybe, or I don't know, something like that. I can't remember. All the videos just merge into one at some point. But I did a video kind of talking about this where I think Usopp is going to be instrumental in helping these kids overcome their fears. Because like we saw that like the kids like aren't waking up even when they get like pricked by the thorns, and a couple of the monsters seem like they've been defeated, right? Like because Saul beat the snake earlier on, and they still aren't waking up, right? So there's like some layer to this, and I don't think it would be surprising if we got like scarier entities soon. Like the ones that we fought so far aren't that threatening. Like they kind of are, but like I said, Saul beat that snake in one hit, and we saw Dorian Brogy take out like 3 of them with a Koku sovereignty in this chapter. So, and maybe they'll regenerate or something. We got to learn more about that. But in general, I think there's going to be a trick to beating them. Like I don't think it's just going to be let's just go up and punch them and then they're done. Like there's probably going to be more to saving these kids. And I think Usopp being the brave warrior of the sea that he wants to be, him being the one to inspire these kids and start like a legend of like a hero, like, oh yeah, this hero came into my dream and inspired me to be brave, and then I was able to. So he's awesome, right? Like that'd be a really cool Usopp thing, because he's also fought kids or inspired kids a lot in One Piece. Like you think about the Usopp pirates, right? Like they pretended to be brave, but were actually scared. But then when push came to shove, they went and protected Kaya from Django, right? Like they stood up to him. So he's always been that kind of guy. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But I'll ask the second question after this. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, Usopp's an interesting character. Obviously, I'm always wanting stuff out of Usopp.
Isn't that your biggest video?
Technically, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Which is, I believe it aged really well. People may debate that, but like at the time when that was made, half of this nonsense, I say nonsense because that's what people called it, didn't exist. And then now we have hockey that can cancel other hockey that's like doing wild. Now we even have magic, and it's like, all right, well, where are we drawing the line with what Usopp could do? You tell me, guys. And here's the thing with Usopp is like, the situation that Oda put the Straw Hats in is very nebulous, I feel like, because the God Knights pose an interesting risk, which is like they should not. I feel like it's odd to put the Straw Hats against them, and Oda made the God Knights powers so like, or not the God Knights powers, but the God Knights themselves. They're kind of, we don't know everything they can do. We just learned about some parts of their powers, and their powers are insanely broken. And Oda could do a very interesting thing where it's like, the Straw Hat, some of the Straw Hats are put out to combat the monsters, and some of the Straw Hats are directly combating the God Knights themselves. But we also have a situation where like we don't know with Shamrocks, where he could just send his sword to fight somebody, like just his sword, and that would be an entire fight. I feel like for even like Usopp and Chopper fighting the Cerberus, and I wouldn't be upset if they had an extended battle against that Cerberus, because that Cerberus was probably stronger than a lot of the opponents in the past islands.
Yep.
That Cerberus is insane.
I agree.
So that's where it's like, okay, how much does Oda want to expand on the God Knights and their powers? We have to remember that this is like a debut of the Holy Knights. We have nine in total, or whatever the number ends up being. We have a set number. We're only seeing 3 technically right now. So it's like Oda could give us more about them, but even they are like so odd in their goal here. They're like, oh yeah, the kids are walking to fire, let's just kill them, it's fine. We're playing games here. So and their powers also seem super broken. You can't wake up the kids by hurting them. You can't wake up the kids by picking them up. And then we discuss in this moment, we look at Sommers, and Sommers gets put to sleep, and we don't know how he wakes up, because it's either he woke up himself, or did Killingham like give him the code word, like, you can wake up now? Did he like enable it? But it's also like, does Sommers, like, does he just sleep with one eye open and he just like can automatically wake himself up? Because we don't know the discrepancy of that sleep ray, which is another broken power in fiction. And somehow Killingham pinpointed, sniped all the kids without anybody noticing, even though, like, I'm not saying this like as like a demerit on Saul, but Saul is a character who should be well rounded in Devil Fruits, considering he was in the Navy for an extended amount of time, alongside Kizaru and a bunch of people with Devil Fruit powers. So it's like, I feel like, yeah, maybe if Elbaf Giants don't know about Devil Fruits, Saul should. And in front of him, Killingham knocked out all the kids, and they were like, whoa, who did this? You know? So we have that, and we see Sommers waking up like that, and it's like you said, is it just like on command thing? Is there a code word that Killingham set for this? We don't necessarily know. So depending on that, that's where I see like, okay, maybe Usopp plays with just the kid component of that. So it's not necessarily, oh, Killingham is his opponent. He's dealing with some other type of situation. Kind of like how it would be kind of separating Sugar from her power. If there was some kind of way that Usopp had to dismantle Sugar's power without affecting Sugar, that would be the situation here. Because I don't know if Usopp could. Killingham is this craziest dude. We're talking about his power, and he's also a mythical Zoan, mythical dragon. Like that's awakened. Like I'm sorry, I don't want Usopp in that boat. You said Usopp versus Killingham. I hope not. I don't want him to get dogged on again. Give him something. Let's build up to the Killingham first. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's the thing, though. It's going to be like Chew Part 2, where Usopp is, like overwhelmed, like he doesn't really have business winning it, but he's gonna think outside the box. And that's the thing about the Gods Knights, is there's probably tricks to getting around this. Like, also, the fact that like how we had Salt come out of the dream last chapter. Well, remember in Thriller Bark, Salt was the key to beating the zombies, and we're kind of inching around the zombie idea, sort of, or at least the Moria angle, because remember his big attack was Shadow's Asgard, and that's a Norse thing. And anyway, there's a lot of connections to Moria in this arc that we might not have time to get to, like Ors, for example. But regardless, I thought that was something. Like when Oda explained the powers, it was Salt, and that just made me think, like, okay, there's going to be a special trick to beating the Gods Knights, or at least getting around this dream thing, at least. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know if it'll be like the dark magic and circle stuff that Usopp figures out, but at least the dream stuff, I'm sure there's a trick. Yeah. And I think Usopp is just the kind of guy to figure it out. Also, like, during Thriller Bark, like, Usopp technically caught a bunch of bodies because he was, like, shooting the salt in a bunch of the zombies' mouths, right? Like, he probably took out the most zombies, I would argue. Yeah. So
he technically would be feeding, like, them, which is, like, funny, because I was going to say, there's another interesting route with Usopp with his Sommers, because Sommers has the thorn fruit, and that's vine related, and Usopp is technically like a botanist by like combat nature, which is crazy. But like this would be something that he may have to deal with, which obviously is like not the best logic, because Oda brought Green Bull. Usopp had nothing to do with it. In the past, in a movie, there was the Mosa Mosa, and who was that? Sanji. And so Sanji and Summers feels like makes a lot of sense because of the whole love thing, and then the like he wants food and whatever, but the love thing primarily. And then Oda had Sanji. I think it was Sanji with the Mosa Mosa fruit, which again with the thorn thing, like it was effectively the thorn fruit that the guy was growing, in the movie. I'm pretty sure. But Summers does say something which kind of reminded me of when you said the whole Usopp helps the kids out of their dreams / nightmares. Summers goes, parents hug their kids tight, thorn and all, and then the kids scream and wail when they see their worst nightmare, mommy and daddy dying in agony. And I was like, damn, that would be crazy for Usopp to like get like not randomly, but like twisted up because he saw his mom die in and that's his nightmare, like, you know what I mean, like not his nightmare, but like he lived through that nightmare that he's saying that's a worst nightmare. It's like Usopp lived through that, and then his on the other side his dad didn't hug him tight, so like there's two sides of it. Where at the beginning of it he's referencing Yas, up the bottom is asking but China or but China.
And something about that I actually brought up in my last video is, you know, Usopp, like whenever his mom was dying, he was like telling her, hey, I have this cure-all medicine, like you're gonna be okay, like it's fine, like you're gonna live. And like he, now obviously that ended up being a lie. Now maybe he will get, you know, he met Chopper, so maybe, you know, finding a cure-all in general could end up being a true thing. But in regards to protecting the kids, I could see Usopp doing something similar, right? Where he is all beat up or something, but he just kind of lies about, oh, don't worry, like if you just believe, it'll all be okay, or some you know, you got to be brave. If you just, you know, believe that you can beat this thing or something, then you can. Like you just got to trust it. I don't know. He'll come up with some, probably a lie, like he probably won't know what else to say in the moment or something to help them, and it'll actually end up being true. That's kind of what I want. Like he'll just make something up and it'll
I think so. You know, the question was specifically about Usopp, right? Not all the Straw Hats, like, or who the opponents are, right?
Yeah, we might have a question later about more matchups, but
yeah. Well, so just, you know, closing up on the Usopp thing is that like I feel like not that I haven't been a fan of like not Elbaf has to be, Usopp has to like elevate to his like be at the position during Elbaf, right? I feel like Elbaf could be a growing starting point, right? Which would mean that he doesn't necessarily have like a designated opponent, right? I just, you know, when we look back at Onigashima, it was like, yeah, he did stuff, but none of the stuff was stuff that like nobody else could have not done had Usopp not been there, right? Like I bring up an example of, and again, like I don't necessarily go back and like cry about it, but like when was it Maha? No, it was who was it? Joseph was jumping off of
Joseph
Onigashima.
Lived. Maha got killed by Izo.
Yeah, Guernica. Joseph ran, like skywalked away, right?
Yes. Yeah,
so like there's nobody else better than Usopp to snipe him out of the sky, right? That's something that Usopp could only Usopp could do, right? Versus like Tama, right? And she did do this. Tama was just like, hey, like make sure all the other smiles eat the thing, right? And it's like Oda could have just wrote it that Tama succeeded and all the other smile users that it was like an infectious situation where the more she got, the more effective they were, and tying people down, putting it in. You could have just wrote it that way. You didn't necessarily need Usopp to throw it in, and it was nice that he did that. Sure, we have something, I guess, right? And I feel like, you know, I go back to Skypiea. Skypiea was a situation where Usopp tried to take down the giant Jack, and Wiper was like the final blow, right, with the reject thing, and then he ended up like basically he should have died, but like he lived, but he essentially went in thinking that he would die, which that is the important part, that he was like, I'm gonna die, and then he lived with One Piece armor. But Usopp did like half of it, right? And we're talking about Giant Jack cutting it down. Loki character wants to, I guess, do something to the tree. He smacked it pretty damn hard, even though it's dying breath.
I don't think he would care if it fell. I'll put it that way. I don't think he'd care.
And then we have a situation where if the tree catches on fire, in order to do it, you have to prune it. They cut it off. So like maybe Usopp gets brought in a utility way that ends up like something that only he could do, and only something that he could do so many of these things and plan and coordinate all these things. Because that's what essentially you were getting at with like the the kids, right? The kids, he was also that he was coordinating with them. And that's the important part about a lot of this. There's only so many characters that can do that coordination. And coordinating the giants where they have the fire thing and then that fell apart, it got smacked out of the tree. They need a commander. And so Usopp being, I have a commander of what, 8,000 or 8 million warriors, right? And now he can command the giants and they do respect him. And so it might be a situation where he commands them and delegates where they go and do all that stuff. I would respect that. 100%. And it wouldn't necessarily need to be, I fight Killingham, I defeated Killingham. No, I diffused them. Arrogant, who are just sitting at a dinner table, thinking they got everything, playing these games, and Usopp is the one that beats them at chess, right? I would like that.
Yep.
I would like that a lot.
I want the same thing, because you think about like Perona, right? Only Usopp could beat her. Like, it's that kind of thing. And so with Killingham, it's like, we have more to learn about his powers in the Gods Knights, but I would imagine like Luffy could probably beat him. Zoro could probably. Yes. Like, maybe it'll be a really hard fight, but that's the kind of thing where I'm like, well, I don't want Usopp to fight them if it's just like with Chu. Like, Chu was a good fight for a lot of reasons, but not because Usopp was the only one who could beat him. Like Zoro or Sanji or Luffy, like any of them could have won. Well, Zoro was kind of cooked at the time, but you know what I mean. Regardless, like he could have come in and like, it would have been no problem for them. But with Perona, I definitely want a Perona thing, and so with Killingham, if like the belief in yourself or whatever does become an actual part of it, then it might be that Usopp's the only one who can help the kids. Because also remember earlier in the arc, what was Luffy doing with the kids? He was scaring them, right? Because he like was really strong, and they're like, oh my god, like he is an emperor, whatever. So like they're probably scared of him at this point. Like maybe not scared, maybe not like scared like they are of these Norse myths or whatever. But but if Luffy popped up into their dream is like, hey, I'm here to help, they'd probably be like, oh my god, another scary thing. You know what I mean? They wouldn't think a helper. And if Usopp showed up, they might be scared just by being connected to Luffy, because like Usopp was there, not helping Luffy, but he was there when Luffy was scaring them and stuff, like swinging on the swing really high and all that. And so that's where I think Sogeking could come in, because just imagine he puts on the mask and he's like, hey, I'm this, because Usopp only really believes in himself when he has the mask on, right? And so I could see him putting the mask on, going into the dream, be like, hey, I'm this awesome hero that has saved tons of people, and I promise you that if you just believe in yourself, you can, like, let's beat this thing together. We can do it. Like some kind of moment like that where like this hero comes in and saves the day. And then you talk about Usopp being a brave warrior of the sea. That would almost make Sogeking like a comic book hero in a way, because it's like, like this fictional person that came in like this dream world. Like, it all sounds fake, right, in a way.
Yeah.
And then you're almost making a Sora warrior of the sea parallel in a way, because then you have Usopp warrior or Sogeking warrior of the sea, whatever the name is, and it's like starting like a legend like that, like a potential fictional one.
Yeah, if it's that, like that route, if against Killingham, that wouldn't necessarily defeat Killingham, but yeah, it would save all the children. I definitely agree with that logic line. And the scope that I had for after, especially this chapter, was that Brook would be involved in that, because the whole singing song, even the song New World, right? It's about Luffy, and the first thing is describing Luffy and like, saving the day, coming out and defeating whenever you lose belief, he comes out and wins no matter what you think. And so, you combine Brook's ability as Soul King to pierce the soul and waken up the soul, make it dance, whatever. That sounds like the
emotions,
perfect power.
All that stuff.
It sounds like the perfect power for disrupting what Killingham is doing. And then the second part would be, Usopp. I think Usopp is the perfect storyteller. Him and Brook, if they could combine story, right? And then you realize, you bring up Sogeking, he had that song. He had that song about that Sniper King and whatever. So, whatever, if you were to combine it, which is another aspect that I personally would like, is that like, this is also an anime trope, but I feel like in One Piece, Oda sticks with the 1v1 more often than like the combination stuff, which maybe Oda starts doing. We got Zoro and Sanji sort of doing combination stuff, but like here, Brook and Usopp combine, make a song, and then it's a song like Usopp makes up a warrior, and maybe it's Nika, or maybe it's something he completely makes up and it ends up sounding like Nika, and then the kids start jamming to it, and then they start manifesting these things. But that's also where I get confused, because we don't know enough about killing his power, he literally went in and grabbed out the salt, and then he goes off and obnoxiously goes, "I could do this multiple times simultaneously from a like he didn't say a distance, but like
But
clearly from
he
a
did,
distance."
yeah.
And it's like these things are like insane. Like the skeleton smacked a giant ship, multiple giants out of this. These things are powerful. Sure, the Hikoku sovereignty ended up taking out like a bunch, but like you gotta wonder where the line stops, right? Like this. Like, does the cloud thing, the thunder, is it just constantly booming thunder? Because that in itself is insane, right?
Well,
does Nika have rubbery powers? And does Killingham have ability to like choose what's manifested, or like how does that work, you know?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing, because we saw that the salt had like 0 calories, or the food did in general, or whatever, right? Like the stuff they were eating, and it made us feel like the dream stuff isn't real. Like I get hologram vibes a little bit from Egghead. It's like kind of a similar thing where like it's real but not really real, right? It's like kind of in between, and so that's why I wonder too, like with this storm cloud, like, should the lightning even really affect people? Like, is it just scaring people? Like, can it even actually, like, hurt anything? You know what I mean? Like, if you got punched by, like, the Draugr thing, like, would it just phase through you? Would it, like I don't know. Like, I would imagine.
With the Draugr, it did hit it took out the fire station thing, so the fire fire ship.
But it theoretically shouldn't be able to, right? Like, if the things have 0 calories, that just makes it feel like it's, like, not fully there.
But here's the thing. They do taste it. So it does have effect. It's just weird. Because that's where, like, the translation, especially in Elbaf, I feel like the translations not have fallen through, but they've been so difficult to translate that not even... I don't know if you saw Stephen Paul on the last chapter. We got the TCB translation of, like, see the forest for the trees or whatever from Loki. Mm-hmm. And then Stephen Paul goes, "Do you hear what the trees are saying?" And it was like, huh? Huh, Steven? What? So, like, in this moment, right, with the 0 calorie thing, and Sai, told me that from the few translations he saw, it kind of felt like their stomach would still be empty. Like, they eat it, but it's not really there. But based on the translation, you could also, like, he says it's like a dream-like thing. And so, when people eat food, they wish it had 0 calories. That's a dream come true, right? I wish I could binge eat all my favorite food and not gain weight, right? There's a world where that's the reality, and we just don't know, because, like, I feel like it's even confusing in Japanese because Oda didn't reveal the full power yet. So obviously when we get the full power, then we'll know. But we saw the Draugr do make a hit, but, like, I agree with the cloud. I said that cloud thing was my favorite thing to get revealed prior. Not prior. I said, when Sai asked me what monster do you want to see the most, I said that cloud. And it was funny because that's the first one we got a name card for, first thing ever. And then I got so disappointed because I thought it was the kid's fear was a fear of spider clouds, like this clouds, the thing that are spiders. I'm like, that's so sick, because they do call lightning strikes like webbing. It webs before it strikes. And so I was like, that's so unique and so fun. And then it was neither. It's not lightning. Thunder. It's not the cloud. It's not spiders. It's the sound. And I'm like, what does that mean? What does this thing?
I know.
And then, you said the thing, like, does it actually do anything? Like, or does this walking is scary?
Well, because I'm looking at it right now, and, like, its lightning strikes are literally... the lightning strikes are like legs. It's like a spider in that way. Yeah. Or, like, you know what I mean? Right. But, like, should this lightning be causing fire everywhere? Like, shouldn't there be fire immediately? And it doesn't seem to be the case here. I know there's fire in other places, obviously, but it doesn't look like those lightning strikes are causing fire in their immediate vicinity. You
know how terrifying a cloud that moves by crawling with lightning legs would be? I would be afraid.
I know, I'm scared.
What I said on stream, if this is true and this is the fear, I need to meet this kid, because that kid is my favorite kid. That is a real fear. And then the chat agreed. And then
he's rational.
Yeah, and then we got it's thunder. I'm like, all right, throw this kid in dungeon. Like, he drew this.
Throw him into the thunder. Just roll him out here.
Yeah, Usopp comes here and tries to manage his fears. I think Usopp would be like, seriously, kid, Seriously, this is what you drew? You couldn't draw something more related to thunder? Like, oh, my window. I don't know. I'm not memeing
Yeah.
on that part, but like, obviously the name card threw me through a loop.
It,
I'm like, thunder?
it, it's like I've been zapped by lightning before. Like this is the thunder is nothing, kid.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
Thunder is scary, but like this is one of those things where Colin looks at these kids like, man, you soft ass. You have to go.
Yep.
Colin's the type of kid right now. I feel like he looks at some of these fears and like, nah, you have to just go through this shit. You need to become a warrior.
You just gotta deal with it.
Yeah,
Like, you
I'm
shouldn't be
afraid
scared
of what.
that.
I want to know what Colin's fear is because I don't think we got his fear, right? Because was he in the classroom? I forget.
No, because I don't think he
Ange-
likes school, right? I think he.
Yeah, like he skipped school, so I don't think he
Yeah.
was there. I'm like, I want to see Collins. What was his fear? You know what I mean?
It's
He
gotta
might-
be. It's gotta be whatever Luffy's is, or it's gotta be close. They gotta
Something.
have like being alone, or not adventuring, or
I could see him
being
running a
stuck in the
revolution.
same place.
Like when Ange says, "What are you frightened of?" He stands up, "I'm not afraid of anything." And then neither should you kids. And then if Colin was in that classroom, we would have avoided all of the shenanigans because that's another thing, right? Another angle to this power is that we don't know how valuable Ange was to the thing. I know that
Oh.
I don't know if the Ange conspiracy theories have hit your
it's-
side of it.
Oh,
but,
of course.
um,
Oh yeah. Sai, anytime Sai is
Sai.
on here, we talk about it. Don't worry.
Yeah, Sai is cooking up that stuff. But
The
you know,
agenda.
yeah, and so we don't know how related the Ange part of it is, but let's go to the what if world where Ange didn't do the questionable daily assignment of what are you most afraid of, and then the kids draw it that day.
The day that they show up, I know.
Right, so it's like, does killing him get insanely nerfed? Like, I don't know.
Well, and Ilva was like Ange, like if I keep thinking about these things, I'm gonna have nightmares. And Ange is like, but your drawings are so good. It's like, Ange, can make them draw anything else.
You're not a
Else.
psychiatrist.
Yeah, anything else, Ange. You're
the
just the
language
art
arts
teacher.
teacher.
You're just the art teacher. You're not the school counselor.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I said. I said the assignment isn't odd. It's just odd coming from her in this moment. Like what was the prompt, right?
Yeah.
And why did you do this to all the kids? And also, why would you do it in front of each other? I feel like that's confidential, right? You don't want the kids bullying each other with their fears and
yeah,
shit,
like I said,
know?
that's a one-on-one counselor session where it's like,
Yeah.
can you draw me what you're so afraid of? It's like, so I can help you. Like this is not like a class. We're all drawing this today together, and we're all just gonna have a therapy session about it.
Yeah, yeah. If I was the principal, I'd definitely bring her to the office and maybe discuss, employment.
Whoa. Maybe a little leave of absence.
Yeah, just a little bit. She's like I said, like
She's not tenured yet.
I said on stream, like, no matter how you spin it, if you were her lawyer, she is definitely, like, you say negligent, whatever. At the end of the day, you cannot say that she did not help out the siege of Elbaf via monsters because, like, all right, Ange, you're saying it was just convenient timing. Well, I don't believe you. Of all the days, 365 in the year, you chose today. What?
and now I will say the thing that maybe exonerates her a little bit, and upsets me a tiny bit, but not majorly, is just that even though the things we're seeing are the drawings of the kids, like they look identical to the drawings, based off of Killingham's powers, we know that he does take it right from the dream world. So in my mind, I'm like, why did we even have to draw them? Right?
Yeah.
Like that was irrelevant, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even make sense because if I'm a kid, the monster I see in my dream is 100 times scarier than whatever I can draw on paper because I'm a kid. I can't draw that well, right? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense for the storm cloud to look that way if it really is from the kid's like mind's eye. You know what I mean? So I don't get it.
Horror movies, like when the kids draw like the Slender Man and it's just like a scribble and then there's like demon blood. If that shit was in the background, you know how I would be scared to read One Piece every week from now on if I just saw like a amorphous line drawing that's like shaking and just like no mouth, just that would be terrifying.
It would be. But then the thing is if you go to the library and you look for like, real like artist depictions of these things, they're probably way scarier, and thus if you brought them into life, they'd probably be 10 times as threatening. Like you probably wouldn't be able to defeat like a real what do they call it? Like a knee dogger? That's the dragon thing, right? However you pronounce that name. Like if that was real, like it's probably not getting one shotted. You know, the snake probably is like if the snake is Jormungandr, it's probably not getting one shotted if it's like a real one. So I'm a little bit confused on that, but I know we're getting close to running out of time, so I just want to speed blitz these last couple of questions if that's all right, and then we can record the other thing we talked about some other time if you want. But regardless, this one. So Bushido, second question: where's Kid at? Or when is Kid pulling up? Or what is Oda planning with Kid?
Nah, me and Sai talked about this. It's just like I don't know where Kid is. I brought up when Sai fake defended Kid, and I called his ass out. He was coping for Kid and saying all this shit like, oh, Kid's gonna be here, and then he had the audacity to ask me. He said, hey, do you think that Kid could scar one of Roto's guardian animals? I'm like, all right, you can't be saying that Kid is going to be the savior of all these kids and their dreams, and he fights all these monsters, and then question if he could fight fodder monsters that like even Luffy said Usopp could be. And then that's when I caught him on stream. I was like, yeah, stop this nonsense. You don't believe in Kid for real. You're just like grifting to the Kid fans right now. But as far as Kid goes, it's just like Oda's like, we know that he caters to the fans in terms of like how they feel about certain characters, right? Like Law was a character he extended because of fan adoration. And so with Kid, it's like, did he look at the situation where Shanks one-shot him and look at all the discussion? We know he's on the internet as far as like he receives, especially with the live action. I feel like he got way more close up with like the memes, painting the baseball bat black. Obviously, we know what those are reference to. It'd be crazy to not believe that. And he's dealing with a lot more. We know that one-to-one he talks with like the American actors in English-speaking, world, and they are on the internet and they see the memes, and these actors are, they're dealing with the characters' memes with Zoro and et cetera, et cetera. So, when it comes to Kid, I just don't know. I feel like, does he shrink his role? He's in a perfect spot where he can, but he put him on Elbaf. I'd like to think that there's something there. And there's only so much that you could really believe that he could do. And one of the things that I'd like to stick my guns to is that like Loki goes, oh, Ragnar can't be lifted by anybody, right? And there's a world where like it's the Mjolnir situation, you have to be righteous, Luffy, whatever. There's also a situation where it's like maybe Luffy and Usopp can't also, and then Kid shows up and he uses magnet powers and he could lift it up. I don't know.
That would be hilarious.
I'm only saying that because like that's something that people believed in before the Kid slander, right? Before when people think about like what Kid could do on Onigashima, take away people's sword. And he did do that to a certain extent, right? He went around the island picking up the scraps, picking up weapons. And so maybe he does that on Elbaf. Maybe he's gathering up swords. Maybe he's gathering up metal because that is something he did on Onigashima. He not waited, but before the fight, the ultimate fight that he had to face, he had to pre-plan by gathering up all the metal. So maybe that's what he's doing right now. Maybe he hit a giant ore of metal underwater and he has to like figure out how to get that shit, right?
Well, it's probably not a lot of metal on Elbaf, I would imagine, because they're getting more globalized, but they were kind of, savages, like they were kind of behind the times a little bit and just started the global trade thing with Harold. So
this lab, maybe he shows up at this lab. That's a good place to put him. Kid people think that he's the 7th Vegapunk, so like maybe we get money on that.
I like that. But what I would think would be really cool is if he pulled up to the lab, but there isn't like metal in the lab, like everything's like natural based. You know what I mean? Like they didn't use metal in the same way. And I think that would be kind of cool because he goes in looking for metal, there isn't any, and then he, is like, well, whatever, I gotta get out of here. But it establishes the Lilith connection. I think that works. I know you got to go soon. Just answer these last couple as quickly as you possibly can, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Michael E, I thought this was a really good one, so I did want to talk about this with the Killingham stuff. I'm curious how y'all think Killingham will interact with Luffy specifically, depending on how Luffy's Gear 5 scarf actually works. Would Killingham be able to tap into the Nika fantasies or imagination, such as would he be able to pull out the hockey bat? So kind of like how we saw Luffy pull out the glasses out of his hair. during Egghead. I guess he's kind of wondering like what is there a connection there? Do they work similarly? Is Luffy's a totally different? I mean, obviously Luffy's with his fruit, but just how would they interact? Or do you think I don't know. Would they have a battle where they both just pull stuff out of thin air and fight? You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you think that would go down?
Yeah, I do, because he's awakened. This is like what we wanted out of Kaido, right? Like a mythical dragon awakened fighting with Luffy. That's what we want, right?
I think it's probably a good guess that he's awakened, but until it's for sure, I wouldn't bank on it, because remember, Yamato also in Hybrid has like the scarf and a lot of flowy hair, but that's guaranteed Hybrid because we also had Oda draw like the child versions of it, and it looked the exact same, and it was confirmed to be the Hybrid. So regardless, right. So it does not a big deal, but anyway.
Yeah. As far as in the realm, I think there's a realm of awakening that relates to that scarf. Whether you're like on the precipice and then it gets confirmed or whatever, I'd like to think that he's awakened. But like you said, as far as this conversation, it's not super relevant. Which is the fight between Luffy and Killingham. How would it look? It will just be pulling out stuff. It is interesting because we don't know. Like the fruit is interesting because it's a mythical Kirin fruit, with Kirin in Japanese meaning giraffe, but also the Chinese, mythical creature Kirin. As far as I know, like I've never really seen it associated particularly with dream manifesting. It's always been like thunder and like the elements and storms and stuff like that. So that's interesting in and of itself. When it comes to the dream, like Oda named it the dream manifesting man, right? Like that's what he called him, which like that almost makes it seem like the awakenings in like Nika, like can other awakenings do the same thing? Prior to it, I felt like, yeah, once you hit the awakening thing, you could just literally pull shit out of your ass, right? As long as you believe in it, right? But like Oda's now segmenting, it feels like dream manifesting man, right? It feels like this is like related to the
dreams, and everything else is something else.
Yeah, and it's weird because like again, he has like three separate part. Like he can put people to sleep. He is a Zoan, and then he can pull the dream out, which the dream pulling out part, that's the part that relates to Luffy. Luffy's also has a Zoan part, and then he also has the rubber part. So you want to feel like you could segment it out like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's weird with this one.
Luffy's also doing it to himself, and Killingham, I wonder if Killingham can't do it to himself. Because if you fall asleep, then you're sleeping. Like you can't pull something out of your dream while you're asleep, right? I mean, but maybe that's what his awakening is or something. I mean, who knows? But that at least would be the first major difference to me. But maybe this is a little bit of hopium or copium. But I think Luffy's is just. I think that's just steam, and he's just manipulating the steam into whatever shape he wants, right? Like
could be.
because you have steam floating around you, and if you can turn anything around you into rubber, you just grab the steam, turn it into rubber, and then you just gotta pick like what shape you want. Because I mean, rubber is malleable. I mean, you can stretch it into wherever. That's always been my like hopium answer. But
I feel a soft it's not pushback, but a soft like example is. Like Bonnie has the steroid of like what I consider every person's capable of what Bonnie's doing. It's just Bonnie has like the steroid of like accessing the timeline, right? So like if whatever world's strongest swordsman, right? Like Zoro could clearly fall off that path, right? Bonnie is a person who can like think about what that path looks like and directly access it. Yep. But technically what she's doing, every person's capable of. It's just that she has the like ability to believe and choose.
Run it.
Right. And so like that's a paraphrased version of that. And look what Luffy did with Bonnie. Luffy is just like kind of manifested the dream out of her. Yep. And so that's interesting in this conversation because it's different than what Killingham did, but also it's not, because it is other people, and the other person accessed that dream, and you'd like to think that the Straw Hats on the course of their lifetime with Luffy are pulling out the dream and then accessing it. And is that a long-term effect of why Luffy is able to awaken Nika / the Nika power, which is why Luffy's fitted for it, because he naturally allows people to pull that out, right? And so that's why the dream manifesting man discrepancy is so odd, because it doesn't feel like, is that just a Kirin thing, or is that something that Nika can also do? Is that something that other people, technically everyone can manifest their dreams, right? Like what are we talking about, right?
Yeah, so, and I think that's a really important point to make, because Cliff, come here, buddy. Cliff, he got really excited when you were talking about that, and he ran out towards the window and started barking. Cliff. He does. Last night, when I was sleeping, he was making these little yips while he was sleeping. He was definitely chasing something in a dream. Oh, it's always so cute. I never make a noise whenever I hear that. I'm like, oh, I can't disrupt this at all.
Dude, that's so funny you said that, because Zenith was doing the same thing, because I put him to sleep yesterday when you were texting me, and he would not go to sleep, but he slept in like a sprawled out position with his legs on top of my chest, and I'm like, bro, can you sleep in a normal position so I could leave? But when he finally fell asleep, his legs were slightly putting pressure, one leg at a time, on my chest. I'm like, oh my god, he's running in his dreams.
Yeah,
like, this is so crazy.
That is so cute. That's insane, dude. That's amazing. But an important distinction to make, I think, between what Killingham's doing and then what Luffy might be able to do, and then also what the crew does, I think, because there's three kind of different ways of dreams manifesting, I feel like, is I think what Killingham is like, kind of going back to the 0 calorie thing, it's kind of fake. Like, you're not actually achieving it, right? But then for Luffy, that's also why I don't think like him making like the glasses out of his hair is like dreams manifesting, because Nika isn't about dreams manifesting in like a fake way. It's about it being in a very, very, very real way, right? Where like Luffy being the sun god, he didn't even know Nika existed. He didn't care about that, but he still achieved not that was his dream necessarily, but like he is such a free person that he was able to attain this form without knowing about Nika, without having the dream of being Nika and all that stuff. Like, it's a completely separate thing. Like, it has nothing to do with his dream necessarily that he's able to do this. And so but he obviously wants to be Pirate King and all that stuff. And I feel like if he had Bonnie's fruit and he could jump to a future where he becomes Pirate King, he'd be like, that's fake. Like, I'm not actually the Pirate King. Like, I'm not Pirate King because I, cheat like this system. Same thing with Killingham. If it's like, hey, if I get the One Piece from Killingham's dream thing, I didn't actually go get the One Piece. And so I think that's part of the lesson here, is like, we're going to find out that Nika's dreams manifestation is a very real thing, where he inspires the people to be the best version of themselves and to achieve it in actuality, to bring that dream into reality. Because like, if I want to be an NBA player and it only happens in my dreams, it never actually happened. Even if I experienced it, that never happened. But if I actually go and do it, and I'm playing in an NBA game, then it actually happened. And I think that's kind of the difference, is Nika's like, we're actually going to do this thing, and where everyone else is like, we're just going to hack our way to it. Like, we're just going to speed run the whole thing. So that's kind of my major thing.
Interesting thing, just like just quick off of that, is that it's so weird where Oda's positioning dragons and now giraffes. I just thought about how, like, technically, because Kaku is known as the Kirin, the giraffe man, though his devil fruit is called the Ushi Ushi no Mi model giraffe. His his title is the giraffe. It's the Kirin man, or whatever. And he was a very odd character, because he just ate his devil fruit, and immediately he was like, I'm a pasta machine. And then he did it. And so, like, the giraffe...
And he turned into the square, the cube.
Yeah, and it automatically, like, his fruit was, like, way more free than, it really should have been. And, like, now, again, we have a giraffe, like, it's the name. It's in Japanese, giraffe.
Right.
And now it's manifesting dreams in a very, like, almost Nika way. And it's like the way Kaku used his fruit, it felt like Luffy. You know what I mean? Like, the pasta machine is like some type of Luffy type of logic. And we, obviously later on in the Beast Pirates, we got stuff like, I'm a helicopter dinosaur. I mean, like, he started just flying with the helicopter in his neck. So it's like, there is a world where, like, all the fruits have sorry, all the fruits have like that freedom. The more like you like get to it, maybe the giraffe is a little bit crazier than maybe the Oda. There's always been a weird fixation with giraffes and Oda.
Yeah, for
First
sure.
of all, but and a few other animals like hippos and giraffes. But as far as this power, we're just gonna have to wait and see a little bit more. Even for Luffy, the awakening is new. We don't know what he can really do, where it stops, and I think also the fruit gets a lot of people mad based off of those parameters. So we do have to. I feel like we have to wait to know where the Hagoromo scarf and the clouds come into
Absolutely.
play. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's. I think Oda's building up to that right now. He's like, hey, here's like a million different ways for dreams to come true. I'll show you the real way later. That's how it feels. All right, this question is specifically for you, Par. How does all of what we've seen or learned in Elbaf tie into elemental hockey?
Oh, who said this?
Kush Daddy, Kush Dade.
Dope. Shout outs to Kush Daddy.
Oh, we love Kush.
Yeah,
And Kush Daddy.
Yeah. The so like again, when the elemental hockey, for viewers who don't know, was my first theories that I posted on my channel, because those are the theories that I started believing when I was a kid watching One Piece, that like there was just like when we got the hockey revealed, eventually I was like, oh, so it's related to this stuff. And obviously when Rayleigh showed it to us, all of those like mystery things, like, it started like making more sense. But the elemental stuff, like the various things that I saw, I was like, wait, does it fit in that boat? He didn't explain it that way. And I held on to it for the longest time. And then we started seeing more of that elemental stuff come into play. And
Shanks
when I had
the flaming sword, one of the big ones.
Right. Shanks with the flaming sword. I mean, there's a lot of examples where it's like there was a few characters in Whitebeard's crew, and I say Whitebeard's crew because I say Whitebeard's. I use them as a great example because Oda put a lot of detail into a group at the time that was like the precipice of war. He still to this day says that the last saga is going to make Marineford small and whatever. And when he says that, it's the final war. The final war is going to debut all the powers that he'd built up till then. So clearly Marineford would be like a sandbox of that thing. So why introduce some characters that we'd never really even relate to, see ever again, and give them these cracked ass powers? And one of them that I like relates to another theory, Mihawk is a sword. There's a character in there with a flail, a mace flail that was alive, that bit Kizaru, bit an admiral. And we had never seen that character ever again. We've never seen weapons alive like that. Like Usopp's Kabuto sort of does, but Oda doesn't like emphasize it. And the point of that Mihawk as a sword thing was that, and I said in the video, that I think that by Elbaf, when we get to Elbaf, we're going to start getting a explosion of sentient objects, sentient weapons. And look what happens. Shamrock comes out with a Cerberus sword. Sure, it's not this. It's that's like Enies Lobby, Alabasta. Those dang, I always forget the name of the dog. Lasso. And Funkfried. Sure, that is that, but like it's an awakened thing. And then we also have Ragnir that's like people can't lift it. People think it's Mjolnir, and it's like, okay, so is the Mjolnir in One Piece that is Ragnir, is that more like Enma and a greater will that's enforcing this thing? And then why does Goldberg have a shield that literally has a face and tongue? And Caramel hasn't been here for 100 years, and Big Mom hasn't either. So like, where does that thing come into play? So there's so many of those things I think that Elbaf is showing us, right? And so sorry, what were we gonna say? And then I'll go back.
I was just gonna say real quick, because it might help what you're saying. Is I am 90-ish% sure that the Cerberus sword is not a devil fruit sword, and it is a black magic, some other something. And also remember, and maybe you mentioned this, and I was looking for the chapter, so for like 5 seconds I wasn't listening. So if you did say this, I apologize. But also remember, there's like that living shield that the one guy has.
Goldberg.
Remember?
Yep.
Goldberg. Yeah, and it kind of looks like a homie. Maybe it's from Mother Carmel or something. Who knows? But regardless, it's tying to what you're saying. We have all these living things that are like new spins on old versions of it we've seen.
And so I had made that Mihawk as a sword theory a while ago, and the opening point was when not opening point, but the lock-in was when Kozuburo gave us this speech, and that speech lined up with what Mihawk was saying. And to like look at Elbaf now, I feel like, damn, that was a good theory given the information I had. And elemental hockey came before that. Came before, like, I even looked at the what was the Oniwa Banshu on Wano, right? And they're like, all of them, they don't have devil fruits. They don't have devil fruits, but some people have like the fire powers, goes like so the clone power. What is that? Paulie, you know, a character who did fight the giants with rope powers. That's not a devil fruit. And so you know, the elemental hockey thing was basically a way for me to say, like, there is going to be a whole new power structure outside of hockey, outside of devil fruits, that's going to connect on the top tier. And at the time, people were like, magic does not exist in One Piece. You're silly to believe so. And so for me, the elemental hockey video already grew its legs and skeleton once we got the God Knights and Gorosei with the magic. Now, the lock-in is that even with that magic, there's stuff outside of it that we cannot explain. And we left Vegapunk, and he didn't explain that. So maybe this 3,000-year-old lab is going to be the place where we start finding out what this other, like, what, you know, when Vegapunk says there's energy all around us, and even him himself could not tap into that, and like fully in the Mother Flame was kind of the direction towards that final you know, power that apparently exists all around us. That 3,000-year-old lab, maybe that is our connection point, and that connection point is what tells us about elemental hockey, the stuff that like the current world and even the giants probably take for granted. And you know, I think about that the sunstone thing that paints like reality into existence, right? That sounds like elemental hockey to me. Like, what is it using? What power is that running? It's not like the dials that absorb power and then put it out. That sunstone power. What is that? You know what I mean? And that would be the elemental hockey theory, which is that there's some sort of energy that they're manipulating, that they're able to manifest certain realities out of it. And the understanding was that devil fruits were a specialized form of that, and they forgot the, you know, the source code of it. And hockey is also a more specialized form, where I kind of said it in the scope of like, we're in a combative nature where like all the characters that have hockey at the moment are mostly combatants. But then we have Isa, who never really fought. She had hockey. So like, why some people are born with it. So like, wouldn't it make sense if some people, and Rayleigh also said like, it's like, you know, certain situations bring it out of you, you know what I mean? And so it might be that most of the people of the world years ago, 3,000 years ago, were all like Nika. Maybe Nika wasn't that special and all of them could manifest certain things. There's just Nika was like a leader type of charisma, whatever, and it was something else. Maybe there's a race of white-haired, white-skinned, godly people like that, which is something that is in Norse mythology, by the way. But, you know, separating from all that, I feel like, how does elemental hockey come into play here? There's, you know, I'm supposed to give a short answer because I gotta go, but I've always said, including in that video, was that Elbaf and the Giants are going to be the stepping stone into learning about all that stuff. If there's any group that could tell us about it, it would be the Giants, because of their, and I said primarily the reason why my logic was standing on that was their lifespan. The longevity of their lifespan opens the doors that they could master semi-Kikan, which was said to be hundreds of years on this. Well, Giants have hundreds of years. They literally throw away hundreds of years to fight their best friends. So like, they are the perfect people. We don't know where ancient giants come into that, but Oda's opening that door. So I feel like slowly but surely, especially now that we're gonna get the combat, you know, even Hakoku sovereignty, it's almost like this weird power that Oda introduced before mantra, right? And that is that hockey? Is that Conqueror's hockey? Is that something? Is that like their Rio, where it's like they just skip like normal armament and go straight to just like insane armament that like Zoro had to train with Mihawk to like get?
Right.
And do they just have like their own version and they just learn it and whatever? Like, we don't know yet. We haven't even dealt with all that. We've just been looking at trees and rocks and clouds. That's all we got of, and little giant kids, and realizing that they are really slow at developing.
Little giant kids.
Yeah.
I love it.
I don't know. I just feel like I have to now that know the Yeti Cool Brothers are the same age. I just like, man, I
Yeah.
just disrespect is
Col-
out the wazoo for these kids.
I'm ready for Colin versus Scotch any day now. Sign me
Yeah,
up for that. Any day.
the Scotch would whoop his ass up and down. He's like, "Do you know my dad's Scopper Gaban?" And then and then Scotch would be like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." His bounty is 5 billion. No, I'm joking, but like because he was a literal world renowned, or they Rock and Scotch were world renowned like bounty hunters that
Right, which is
Doflamingo
crazy.
got.
Which is just so crazy.
Yeah,
And I like what you were saying, because also we saw the mural here in Elbath, and on the mural you can see energy floating like all around, right? And so going back to your point of maybe this lab has something to tie to that energy and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like this seems to be the arc where we're learning about whatever energy the world had, right? Which I think seems to be the Forbidden Sun energy, or whatever that really ends up being. Is that tied to soul energy? Who knows really? I'm sure we're going to find out about that. And in my mind, my theory that I did on the mural, like, I think that Forbidden Sun is probably what gave rise to the first Nika as like the conduit, where like Luffy needs his devil fruit to become Nika, where Bonnie needed her devil fruit to become Nika. There's always like a conduit, right, to like take you to that, like, because for Luffy, no matter what his dreams are or whatever, like he needs something to become rubbery. Now, could it be hockey like you're talking about? Well, maybe it's just this energy that we're talking about right here. Maybe that's what gave their body the ability to change, at its base level, like fundamentally into being rubber, so they could stretch, right? Like, there has to be something that does that, because everything else Luffy does in Gear 5th could be explained with Devil Fruit shenanigans, but it's like, well, where does that start? Like, what's the first thing that lets your body transform into a whole new state of being? Maybe it is this energy that we're finding out on the mural. Maybe that's why it's also tied to the trees. You also think about the Shandora trees that held the souls of their ancestors, and they were cut down, and that was a big deal. Well, what if trees actually do hold souls, and what if that's what we're seeing now with the Atom Tree, and that's where the power comes from, right? There's like a lot of interesting tie-ins there. So I agree with you that this is where we're going to find out about
I
these
do have to go,
powers.
but you brought up, I completely missed this part, but a huge part of that elemental hockey video was building off of a huge power structure that Oda introduced and kind of left in the dust. And the only character that's carried it on is Luffy. And then we got it reintroduced with Lucci, which was semi-Kikan, which when you
or
said
life
like
return, for those who don't know.
right. And so that ability that Kumadori introduced to us, and Chopper said that what he's doing is called biofeedback. So there's a biological way to do that. And the thing about, what you're saying, introducing something that causes the rubbery state, technically with the semi-Kikan, like if you had a bunch of masters and someone wanted to be rubbery based off of what was said there, you could, and they were demonstrating it. He stretched out. He said that you would have utmost control of your entire body. Stretch it out. They had paper hearts. They were turning their body into paper and like dodging stuff. And so they're turning their Tekkai was like a different thing where the iron body, which was more or less like organ control too, but like that semi-Kikan thing was something that only Luffy essentially carried out. And what I've always said was like Luffy's devil fruit is just that on crack. Like it's just the rubbery thing. You could just say that it's just like an automatic semi-Kikan. And who's to say that back in the day, especially if we kind of know that Joy Boy lived for like 100 years or close to it, because the Void Century was when he was born and it ended presumably when he died or something like that.
Very close.
So he was at least 100 years. And so if he died by the end of his story and Luffy's already hitting the story at 20, like I agree with the Luffy conduit part, devil fruit, whatever, that all makes sense for a story. It's like, we're not going to wait till Luffy's 100. But if you go back further, maybe the people live longer, right? We already have the giants that live 400 years. So if you have all the characters live to like 500 years or something like that, they probably all had semi-Kikan. And that's a wild world to be in.
Yeah,
so.
And I also think during the Void Century, there could also be some like time stoppage shenanigans. Like because you think about the Tentata history books, they like their history stops 900 years ago, but then restarts 800. And I'm just thinking about it like, okay, so so people probably died in between, right? There's probably like 2 generations or something that would have died in between. So like, how does that, like, how do you not just like, for one thing, how do you just not fill in the history during those 100 years? That just feels weird that you were like, like, or even after the 800-year mark, why didn't you go back and fill it in? But I just say that because it's always made me think, like, I feel like time stopped almost, where like those same people from 900 years ago were still there 800 years ago. It's like they didn't age, or I don't know, frozen in time, frozen in cold weather.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, something. And so going back to what you're saying, maybe whatever that special shenanigans are, it could be that's how Joy Boy had enough time to learn that and everything. So yeah, so I'm with you. But Par, thank you so much for being here. I know we went over time. Tell Sai I'm sorry whenever you talk to him. But then after you say I'm sorry, and after he accepts the apology, then tell him that he's welcome to join next week for the next redacted episode.
Will do.
But and also just real quick before you say your final goodbye, I just want to let everyone know, if you're wondering where, like, because I didn't do an episode last week or the week before Kev's audio got messed up, so that's my bad. And then last week I was doing the mural video, and that was an hour long, and I did not have the energy. So, but we are back to regular scheduled programming from here on out. Yeah, so we'll get Par. We'll get Par on again ASAP for sure.
Yeah. I have my technical studio now, so I'm more devoted to content again, finally. So, thank you, Dax, for bringing me here on the call. Great timing, like always. You always find a way to find it, like, good time. Although this weekend is Eid, so Eid Mubarak to anybody who celebrated or celebrating.
Absolutely.
But found time perfectly to fit in when I got all my stuff set up and ready for collabs. So thank you for bringing me on. Thank you, Dax community, for the questions. Definitely got me thinking about a lot of things in a different light, which is always great. And
Same.
Shout outs to your mural video. Hour long is quite the feat. I've been looking to come back with the content, and me, like, a bunch of long videos, and those are just so daunting to edit that I need like the momentum. So I might make a Ginny video first and then do my mural video, which.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just had a stream about it because people were bringing up Gunko and Ginny, and there was something I wanted to dispel, but then it led to, I was like, oh wait, this is a really good Ginny theory. It had nothing to do with Gunko.
Interesting. Okay. I was gonna say, if it has to do with Gunko, hit me up, because my next video is about Gunko. So
yeah, it starts off just saying, like, I disagree with some of the popular thoughts that people brought to me, but then I was like, wait a second, I'm thinking about Ginny in a different light now. So but yeah. So but my mural video should be coming up soon, because it's like I have 30 minutes of it recorded. There should be an hour and like 10 minutes of it total.
Awesome.
And editing that's going to be dumb, but
it was crazy, dude. I don't know if you've seen any of mine, but I made a custom mural animation where because Trevor drew it, he put all the different things on layers, and I put it in Premiere Pro and animated it, so like the fire is actually fire, and like the smoke is actually smoke, and like the people are moving on the conveyor belt and stuff like that. And I'm so glad I did that, because that just let me throw that in the video like 100 times and just take up space instead of editing everything a million times. You know what I mean? So I was happy I did that, but I will tell you, it was daunting. But everyone should be super excited for Par's video. I'm excited that I'm not the last one to release a mural video, because I was already a month late. But now that now that you're doing it, you can have the honors of being the last one. You can be at the top of the stack on the algorithm. Yeah, I
was so frustrated because the week the mural dropped, it was both the hardest week of like all the stuff, because I told you the move schedule, so a month late, a month move in, all the stuff. But I was also free that week, so I had made most of the theory at that time. I just hit the editing thing, and then after last 3.5 weeks, I had zero time, and so now I'm like, whatever, I'm just gonna post it.
I feel it. My editor got his biggest single payment ever from me from the mural video.
Damn,
so
that's dope.
Yeah, he did the whole thing pretty much, except for 2 minutes. Yeah, I did the ad because there was a promo in it, and I did like 2 minutes myself, but he did the rest of it. So shout out Dilcor for sure.
Awesome.
But all right, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna let Par get out of here because I'm already 30 minutes over. But yeah, good. You'll be back. So appreciate you guys. Have a good one.
Peace out.